Welcome to Podkey Fantasy Football, where draft hype gets tested before it costs you. A lot of bad draft advice sounds smart because it gives you a clean rule. This year, especially, the edges look more situational: format, price, team environment, and whether a preseason headline is actual role news or just noise. If you're obsessing over one draft slot, you're probably preparing for the version of the draft least likely to happen. The useful reps are mock drafts from several positions: 1.02, 1.05, 1.08, 1.10, and with different league settings, because that teaches you where the runs actually start and which tiers evaporate fast. That matters more than memorizing ADP. ADP is a rough map. The decision point is usually whether you're at the last acceptable player in a tier. A practical way to handle that is keeping 3 or 4 names queued every round, so when someone snipes your first choice, you don't panic into taking a player you didn't really want. And if there's a conviction player, take him waiting for the next turn, because the market says he might slide is often fake discipline. The cost of missing your guy is real. The reward is usually just feeling clever. Roster construction still starts with league rules, not internet doctrine. An RB start can be perfectly defensible in a 2-receiver league, or when the board gives you real value. In 3WR formats, the math changes. Receiver depth gets stressed much faster, and missing on early WR volume is harder to repair. That's also why mock drafts are useful beyond player takes. If you take Bowers early or an elite tight end before a WR run, what does that force you to do later? Same question if you push quarterback down. Early choices create downstream obligations. Even trade-down thinking fits here. Turning a 1.05 into multiple earlier mid-picks can be sharp if your format rewards depth and you believe the tier is flat enough. But that's only true if those extra picks really land in premium ranges, not if you're just moving back for the feeling of activity. Some analysts prefer James Cook over Justin Jefferson in the late first of full PPR, and the logic is coherent even if it sounds aggressive. The case isn't that Cook is a better real-life player, it's that volume, touchdown equity, and a strong offense can close the gap fast if his passing game work rises under the current coaching approach. Bijan Robinson, getting labelled the safest 1.01, also holds up better than most top-pick arguments because the receiving floor is doing a lot of the work there. By contrast, the Christian McCaffrey discussion is really a portfolio question. His ceiling is obvious. The binary risk is obvious too. If injury hits, the value drop is brutal. And price discipline has to stay consistent. Ken Walker at roughly $25 in a $200 auction looks very different from Ken Walker at a premium. Same with George Pickens if the room drafts the brand name instead of the actual role. Jonathan Brooks is a good example of a player whose draft value may change faster than his actual role certainty. The confirmed part is simple. Chuba Hubbard has a hamstring issue. Brooks's ADP has moved, and sharper leagues have pushed him toward the back of the 6th, with RB28 territory cited as a reasonable buy point. The speculative part is everything after that. A strong preseason or one long run could push the price again, but a highlight doesn't answer the bigger question, which is whether Carolina gives him enough 3-down usage soon enough for that cost to pay off. So the edge isn't blindly being early or late, it's tracking the market in real time and refusing to pay for upside after the room has already priced in the best-case story. At tight end, the strongest cases are workload-driven, not talent poetry-driven. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and Colston Loveland are interesting because a huge target share can overcome imperfect quarterback play. If a tight end is effectively functioning as a primary receiver, the position label matters less. Kincaid is the cleaner later upside bet if his route participation expands, because the per-route efficiency has already flashed. What doesn't hold up as well is auto-drafting the mid-round tight end blob without a clear usage edge. If the difference in role isn't obvious, you're often paying to avoid discomfort rather than buying a real advantage. And if you spend up at tight end, insurance still matters. Availability questions don't disappear because the starter was expensive. A cheap backup like Kincaid, Likely or Dulcich can save you from burning week 1 fab on a scramble. In single quarterback leagues, the default should still be patience. There are enough viable options in that round 8 to 10 pocket: Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Bonix, Matthew Stafford, Jordan Love, that paying up often buys comfort more than points. Goff is especially interesting because the floor case is already useful. Durable, big passing volume, stable environment. He doesn't need to beat the elite quarterbacks outright, he just needs to crush them on price. The main exception remains rushing equity. A player like Jalen Hurts changes the baseline because the scoring floor is built differently. In Superflex and auctions, the incentive flips access to 2 startable quarterbacks usually matters more than overpaying for one projection. Pairing a stable veteran with a high upside dart can work, but only if you're honest about the downside. Sometimes the lottery ticket is just a 0. Wide receiver is where the market may be fighting last decade's assumptions. Passing volume has shown real decline. Fewer teams are clearing major passing thresholds, and fewer receivers are hitting strong PPR scoring marks. If target concentration is increasing, then the middle class of receivers gets shakier. That makes role and touchdown equity more important than aesthetic preference. Discounted players like Rashee Rice or Mike Evans can be profitable if the market is over-penalizing controversy, age, or style while ignoring likely usage. It also means late-round receiver darts should be contingent upside bets, not random names. Jalen, Coker, and similar profiles matter only if there's a believable path to target share. And this is where preseason hype needs the hardest filter. Spectacular camp clips can move Carnell Tate, Egbuka, Jordan Tyson, even Brooks, without proving they earned durable roles. In auctions, a lot of edge comes from forcing the room to show its tendencies early. Nominating the tier below the true superstars can drain budgets fast because managers still feel like they're buying safety while spending real money. Disciplined bidding matters more than perfect values. If you're regularly winning players at numbers you'd regret 5 minutes later, the sheet didn't fail. The process did. An inflation tracker helps because it tells you whether the room is paying above projections broadly or just chasing a few names. Vegas implied totals can help as a tiebreaker too. Cheap pieces on strong offenses are often more interesting than prettier names on weak environments. But those totals aren't gospel. Coaching changes, schedule, and roster shifts can make a market signal less actionable than it first looks. A few backfield narratives also need context. Ramondre Stevenson projecting as New England's early 3-down lead is believable because pass protection and red zone trust usually decide snaps before explosiveness does. Kansas City committee talk around Isaiah Pacheco shouldn't automatically scare you off either, because some teams talk committee every year and still funnel meaningful work to the preferred back. In Keeper and Dynasty, the cleaner principle is role security plus timing. Egbuka over a riskier profile at similar cost makes sense if the long-term path is sturdier. Selling a star like CeeDee Lamb for 2 future firsts can be reasonable for a non-contender, but the exact timing still affects the return. And your bench should reflect all of this. Contingent upside over replaceable filler, handcuffs only where the backup can actually become startable, and constant awareness that price, format, and role beat generic rankings. That's the board through a sharper lens. Thanks for listening to Podkey Fantasy Football. If the market moves, the logic has to move with it. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.